Hi, I'm Andrew Wasson. Thanks for joining me for my weekly guitar blog. It's May 18th, 2014, and this week we're going to do a lesson on leaving the blues scale behind. Now, this week's question was sent in from Jody. He's out in Van Nuys, California, and he wrote in with this email. Can you consider making a lesson on playing a blues lead for a 12-bar blues progression that does more than just use the blues scale? I've been using the blues scale for a while now, and when I listen to Stevie Ray, Clapton, or Buddy Guy, they do way more notes than what's in the blues scale. I've read that they play the chord tones a lot, but I'd really like to see somebody well-trained like you explain this and help me leave the blues scale behind. From Jody in Van Nuys, California, USA. Well, hey, thanks for writing in, Jody. You know, the whole idea of using chord tones and having a good working knowledge of things like arpeggios and other scales is a great benefit to all musicians, whether you play blues or you play any other style. Plus, it's a fairly straightforward concept to learn, you know, when you're getting into arpeggios and scale patterns. It's all just shapes and fingerings. So developing a sense for what it means to be playing chord tones in both terms of learning to spot the tones themselves and how to use them in a solo is luckily something that doesn't take years of study in a college or university to do. Now, in this lesson, I'll run through a fairly straightforward blues-based melody that I composed over a 12-bar blues progression in the key of A. It leaves blues scale behind and focuses primarily upon chord tones with some use of the major pentatonic just to fill in some of the gaps. So let's not waste any more time and head straight to the guitar neck. Well, before we start breaking down every section of the melody and discussing all the chord tones that are involved, I thought it'd be a good idea if I just played the whole melody that I've composed over this 12-bar blues in the key of A and give you a chance to hear how the entire thing sounds at first, and then we're going to break it down in all the details after that. So here we go. I've got it all programmed in with a loop pedal track in the background, and I'll give you a chance to hear the melody. Here it goes. Alright, so let's run down this whole melody now, starting with our first two measures of this 12-bar blues in A. It's going to be using the A dominant 7th chord in the first measure, that's the root chord, and then we're going to move into the 4 chord of D dominant 7th after that. So to get started into the melody, I'm going to use a little bit of A major pentatonic. If you're real familiar with the blues scale in minor pentatonic, the major pentatonic might be kind of a new world for you to explore. But it's a really cool sound, and you'll grasp onto it fairly quickly. And the phrase that I came up with sounds like this. So what happens there is I'm sliding into the C sharp, and then I'm taking the E, which is the 5th of the chord of A, and I'm pedaling between those notes and walking up through the major 6, that's an F sharp, and then I'm coming into this flat 7, but it's going to be a little bit of tension driving us over to that D7 chord. And we're just going to drop down once that D7 chord comes in into the D7's major 3rd, it's an F sharp. And we're also going to kind of pedal a little bit off of that E a little as well. That's like a 9th chord tone to us for that chord. So we have some interesting chord tones happening there between our first two chords of the progression. And that's just covering that A and that D7 in bars 1 and 2. So let's move on to bars 3 and 4 now. We're going to come back again to the 1 chord for both of these bars, and of course that's the A7 there. And I went back once more, you know, into the world of major pentatonic here when I started this phrase. So you can hear that I'm really driving home pretty hard onto that A there. That's going to be a real focused tone for us. It's a really nice sound. It really anchors you right to that A chord, obviously because it's the root. But also, you know, like we had done on the D7 chord back in the last measure that we were looking at there, I wanted to go with a chord tone, you know, directly related into that A7, and that's going to be pushing into a G in this case here. And we're going to have that come in on a lower register in this case, and we're going to float on it. We have it for quite a bit of time. It's a half note into that 4th measure there. So we're going to have a lead in with that little bit of major pentatonic. And And then we're going to have this push into the G where it's going to sustain. And we're going to pedal into it as well using the 5th chord tone of E. So the whole thing's going to go. So we're going to lock down that harmony quite well because that's a crucial chord tone for our A dominant 7th chord, that flat 7. So there's some good chord tone work there with that couple of measures. Now let's head over though to the 5th and 6th measures where we're going to end up back once again on our 4 chord of the key, which is that D7. And I've got a really different sound applied over it here. This is going to be quite unique. We're going to really get into some C sharp note in this measure. Now that might be kind of weird because if you know your chord tone somewhat, you'll know that there's a C natural in a D 7th chord. So we're going to be playing some C sharp in there. That's going to clash quite a bit. And this tone, of course, is not found as a chord tone on D7. It's found as a chord tone in D major 7 chord, not D dominant 7. So, you know, in fact, I should mention that this interval, it's actually a dissonant interval. It's kind of obvious. It's pretty dissonant against these existing tones of the chord here. But normally, you know, if you think about it, this kind of effect would be kind of frowned upon in most styles of music. But, you know, within the world of blues and jazz, it's actually considered, you know, as not only an interesting idea, but of course, quite a common idea out there. So here's how these 5th and 6th measures sound with the addition of this C sharp note. It's going to be pretty busy. It's all steady 8th notes. And here we're really, you know, hammering that home. And lots of that natural C against the C sharp. It's kind of an interesting color there. But the ending tone, you can hear it's real strong into that A. There's a lot of A notes, which is the 5th chord tone of that D7 chord. So really pushing that quite heavily in those bars. Now let's move onward though into measures 7 and 8. We're going to go back to that root chord for both of those bars, and that's A7 once again. But over these two measures, we're going to cut the amount of scale tones way down. We had a really busy measure there, or a couple measures on bars 5 and 6. So we're going to cut that way down in terms of scale tones, instead of just allowing only a few crucial chord tones to take center stage. And these measures are going to really highlight the value now of, you know, knowing as much as possible regarding arpeggios. See, the arpeggios are the specific chord tones, or what we'll, you know, often find referred to as the very color tones of the chord. And what I mean by this is that these are the actual chord tones. So in other words, you know, in the chord of A7, that chord has the notes of A, C sharp, E, and G natural. And if we use most all those chord tones, and even if we use about 90–95% of them, these melodic ideas that we create out of the arpeggio tones are going to function very strong as melody. And plus, we're going to really cut down on the amount of you know, notes that we're going to be playing. There's going to be a lot more time involved in this in these couple of measures. We're going to have a quarter note with a grace note hammer-on coming from a C natural into C sharp. And then we come into the root of A, that's 7th fret, 4th string A. So we're going to have a kind of a cool walk down in that 8th measure. The walk down, the one unique tone that's not in the arpeggio is going to be that F sharp. It's kind of like your major 6 sound on that. So here's those measures, 7 and 8. All right, and with that done, let's move on to measures 9 and 10. These are important ones because these are the 12-bar blues formats turnaround section. It's going to give us a new chord now. It's the E7th in bar 9, and this is the progression is 5 chord of the key, and then in bar 10 we're going to have the 4 chord show up on the D7. And to cover these two chords, we're going to apply a melodic theme for each chord. We'll have that E7 show up, and then we'll cover a very similar melodic theme to cover the D7 chord. So you can hear the similarity between those two. And, you know, these melodic statement ideas are really powerful. This one particularly operates in 2 parts, giving a real detailed chord coverage into the chord found within each of these measures. So over the E7 chord, we're going to find all the chord tones, the major 3rd, perfect 5th, flat 7, the root is in there, everything's there. And then when we head down to the D7, again, we're going to have all the chord tones as well. So anyway, the whole thing sounds like this when you play it into tempo. So it's a really nice sound when you do that, when you create, you know, two back-to-back statements like that. So anyway, here we are at the end now. Our measures 11 and 12 are here now. So these are going to finalize both the turnaround section that we just went through of the 12-bar blues, as well as operate to really turn the whole progression back around for the top and get the next pass started. So in measure 11, we're going to have an important tension builder here. We're going to find the progressions, root chord of A7 once again. And it's quite common, you know, when we get to this 11th measure to really push heavily upon this chord's 5th chord tone, which happens to be an E, since that also happens to be the root of the 12th bar's chord, which is, of course, E7. Now, the lick I've incorporated here does just that, and on the lick itself, we're going to have E note on the 5th fret, 2nd string as a pedal tone. You can hear how we're just kind of totally going downwards there off that 3rd string. We have the hammer on that takes us into C sharp, and then we're going to have our D, C sharp, C natural, and that's going to drag us down here to this 4th fret, 3rd string B, which will come in just in time to connect real nice onto that E7th chord. And you know, that E7th, we're just going to do some double stops on that chord. We're going to have the E7's root and 5th chord tones, the E and B there, as well as the minor 7 and major 3rd. It's going to jump up the neck and do a D and G sharp. So here's how both those measures go through. It's a really nice sound, really connected to each of those chords, and that's it. That's the whole melody. All right, well, I'm going to play through the melody one more time for you, and then after that I'm going to do a little bit of improvising and just have some fun with all these ideas that we've been covering in the lesson. Well, you know, blues scale is not only one of the most popular scales that students of the guitar end up learning, but it's most often the very first scale that we're exposed to as students of this instrument. which means we tend to learn how to phrase very early on with the blues scale, and we become very effective with it. Now, this is all very good on all kinds of levels, except when it comes to expanding our horizons by branching out into all the other scales and arpeggios available to us out there. The work involved to be able to effectively apply, chord tones and other scale tones will take both time and effort, but, the rewards to our playing are certainly well worth all the effort. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed the lesson. That's about all the time I have for today. As always, thanks for watching. Have yourself a great week, and I'll catch up with you next time. Bye for now.